The 50 Class A tow trucks from Coastal Carrier Towing of Oceanside, California, rolled up Gomez Trail Road in single file at 2:14 a.m. on a Friday in late October, under a no-moon Fallbrook sky, with one licensed driver per truck, one fluorescent flatbed each, and one Coastal Carrier dispatcher in a yellow rain jacket, standing at the bottom of my gravel access road, holding a clipboard with the names and license plates of every El Dorado Ridge Community Homeowners Association member vehicle that had been parked, without my consent, on the private quarter-mile gravel road my grandmother Beatrix Prideaux had paved with her own savings in 1971. By 4:48 a.m., all 50 vehicles were on flatbeds. Thad Vega's lead crew worked the access road in 3 rotating teams of 15 flatbed operators each, with one Coastal Carrier safety supervisor walking the line behind them, holding the master vehicle inventory clipboard, photographing every vehicle's license plate and VIN before the flatbed lift, and checking each vehicle against the Vehicle Code 22658 compliance checklist Marielle Bridger had drafted at her office at 1 a.m. that morning. Every vehicle that came off the road had a printed Coastal Carrier tow ticket with the date, time, location, vehicle description, license plate, VIN, posted signage compliance verification, and the impound lot location and reclamation procedure, written in plain English. The tow tickets were left in clear plastic sleeves, bolted to my fence posts, beside each vehicle's prior parking location, so that the owners would, when they walked out their front doors in the morning, find a ticket explaining exactly what had happened, where their car was, and how to retrieve it. The tickets were Marielle's idea. Thad printed them on his shop's commercial label printer in 3 minutes flat at 1:14 a.m. By 6:14 a.m., all 50 vehicles were in Coastal Carrier's secured impound lot in Oceanside, under California Vehicle Code Section 22658, which authorizes a private property owner with posted signage and a licensed tow operator to remove unauthorized vehicles at the owner's expense, pending owner reclamation at the impound lot. By 6:47 a.m., the first El Dorado Ridge HOA resident, a retired Naval Air Station pilot named Captain Lyle Whittemore, had walked out of his front door in his bathrobe to discover that his 2019 Audi Q5 was no longer in the spot he had been parking it in every weekday morning since June of 2024. By 7:14 a.m., the second resident had walked out of her front door. By 7:48 a.m., 42 more residents had walked out of their front doors. By 8:14 a.m., the HOA president of El Dorado Ridge, a 49-year-old woman in a turquoise quilted vest named Margaret Calloway Shaw, who had personally orchestrated the forged easement under which her HOA had been illegally using my private access road for the previous 26 months, was on her phone to the San Diego County Sheriff's Office, demanding that they force the immediate return of every member vehicle. I came back to my grandmother, B. Prideaux's small Fallbrook, California avocado property at 10:47 p.m. on a Thursday in mid-October of 2024, 12 hours after the USS Sterett had docked at Naval Base San Diego at the end of a 9-month Indo-Pacific deployment, with a sea bag and a pelican case, and a 14-year-old Akita mix rescue dog named Boatson, who had spent the entire 9 months at my cousin's house in Bonsall, and who had not, by my cousin's most recent assessment, slept more than 4 hours a night since the day I had left in February. I am Commander Gage Prideaux, United States Navy, 41 years old, born in Coronado, California in November of 1983 to a Chief Petty Officer father and a Naval Hospital nurse mother. I am a 2007 graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, a 2014 graduate of the Naval War College, and the current commanding officer of the USS Sterett, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer based out of Naval Base San Diego. I have been a surface warfare officer for 17 years. I have completed 6 operational deployments. The most recent, Operation Pacific Steel, the U.S. 7th Fleet's 9-month Indo-Pacific patrol that ran from February 14, 2024 to October 17, 2024, was my second deployment as a commanding officer. The crew of the Sterett came home with every single sailor on the manifest still on the manifest, which is the only sentence that matters at the end of a deployment. I am divorced. My ex-wife Corrine moved out of our small Coronado house in June of 2018 because the rotational deployment schedule of a Navy 05 fast-track command path was, in her honest assessment in our living room on a Saturday morning, not the life I signed up for, and not the life I am willing to keep raising children inside of. We have 2 children. Our daughter Marlo is 12 years old and a 7th grader at Coronado Middle School. Our son Stark is 10 years old and a 5th grader at Silver Strand Elementary. They live with their mother in the same Coronado house Corrine and I bought in 2016. I have them every other weekend when I am stateside, which works out, in a deployment year, to approximately 2 weekends out of 12 months. The kids and I FaceTime every Sunday afternoon from whatever time zone the Starret is in. Marlo is currently teaching herself the upright bass. Stark is a Padres fan. B. Prideaux had been the kind of grandmother who, by the consensus of every La Jolla Junior High School student she had taught between 1939 and 1973, was the strictest English teacher in San Diego County, and the kindest woman any of them ever met outside of their own mothers. She had been 5 feet 2 inches tall. She had worn the same gray cardigan every winter from 1962 until 2014. She had taught me, on her front porch in Fallbrook on a Sunday afternoon in 1991 when I was 8 years old, that the difference between a sentence and a paragraph was the question the sentence answered, and the difference between an officer and a sailor was the question the officer answered. I had thought about her instruction at every command decision moment of my Navy career. I had thought about her instruction at every parent-teacher conference for my own children. I had thought about her instruction the morning I came home from the Starret deployment and saw the 11 HOA member parking signs on her fence posts. B would have known exactly what to do. She would have done it by Tuesday afternoon. My grandmother Beatrix Prideaux, who everyone called B, bought the small Fallbrook avocado property in 1968 with the savings she had accumulated across 34 years of teaching 7th grade English at La Jolla Junior High School. B was 61 when she bought the property. She had been widowed since 1956, when my grandfather Halsey Prideaux had been killed in the Korean War. She had raised my father Halsey Jr. on her own. She had retired from teaching in 1973. She had grown Hass avocados on the property until her death in 2018 at the age of 111 years old, the second oldest living California avocado grower at the time of her passing, by the certification of the California Avocado Commission. She had left the 4-acre property to me in her will. I had been 35 at the time. I had been her only living grandchild. The will was honored. The deed transfer was recorded with the San Diego County Recorder's Office on October 14, 2018, in document number 2018-0428114. The deed described the property as 4.11 acres of avocado orchard agricultural land, plus the quarter-mile private gravel access road my grandmother had paved with her own savings in 1971, connecting the property to the public county road at Gomez Trail Road. The El Dorado Ridge Community Planned Subdivision was built between 2020 and 2021 by an out-of-state developer named Camden Carlisle on a 50-acre tract immediately east of my grandmother's property that had been a working orange grove until the original Linnett family had sold it to Carlisle in 2019. Carlisle subdivided the tract into 50 single-family home lots at average prices between $900,000 and $1.4 million. The first home was occupied in May of 2020. The last lot was sold in November of 2021. Carlisle's development company filed for Chapter 11 reorganization in March of 2022. The El Dorado Ridge Homeowners Association was formed by the residents that same month under the supervision of a Vista, California, HOA management company called Ridgeline Community Services. Margaret Calloway Shaw, Margot, in the El Dorado Ridge Community Newsletter, moved into the highest lot of El Dorado Ridge in November of 2020 with her husband Trent Calloway Shaw, a La Jolla commercial real estate developer. She was elected to the El Dorado Ridge HOA board in May of 2021. She was elected president in May of 2022. She had been re-elected in May of 2023 and May of 2024 by unanimous votes of an HOA membership that had not, by my later review of meeting minutes, ever opposed any of her amenity expansion proposals. I had met Margot exactly once before my February 2024 deployment, at a Saturday morning Fallbrook Farmers Market in October of 2023. She had been at the Calavo Growers booth buying a flat of Reed avocados. I had been at the same booth buying a half flat of lambs. She had introduced herself as the president of the neighboring HOA. She had asked me, with the smile of a woman who had rehearsed the question, whether I might be interested in granting her HOA an easement to use my private access road as overflow guest parking, perhaps in exchange for community goodwill and the occasional dinner invitation. I had told her, politely, that the private access road was the only access to my home, and that I needed it kept clear for emergency vehicles, agricultural equipment, and my own truck. She had told me she understood. She had not, by anything I had seen in the conversation, looked like she had understood. I had deployed on February 14th of 2024 from Naval Base San Diego with the Steritz crew of 328 sailors, the Steritz Organic SH-60R Seahawk detachment of 41 personnel, and the rest of Carrier Strike Group 11. I had been at sea, in port call cycles between Yokosuka, Manila, Darwin, Singapore, and Diego Garcia for the next 9 months. I had not been on U.S. soil in any continuous 24-hour period since the morning we crossed the breakwater at Naval Base San Diego on a clear February Wednesday with my children Marlo and Stark on the pier with Corrine, all three of them waving small American flags I had bought at the Coronado Walmart the night before. I had not been on my Fallbrook property for 246 days. I had also, by my own quiet decision in November of 2023, asked my cousin Wilkinson Prideaux to keep an eye on the Fallbrook property during the deployment. Wilkinson was 44 years old and lived 12 miles east in Bonsall. He had been Boatswain's caretaker. He had agreed to drive past the Fallbrook property approximately twice a month, walk the perimeter, and notify me if anything seemed out of order. He had, by his own account, driven past 16 times across the 9 months. He had walked the perimeter on 6 of those visits. He had not seen anything that looked, at the casual pace of a cousin's drive past on a Saturday afternoon, like a forged easement and a $41,000 paving job. The paving had been done across 2 days in early June, while Wilkinson had been on his own 1-week beach vacation in Carlsbad. The HOA signs had gone up on a Tuesday afternoon Wilkinson had been at work. The vehicles parked on the gravel road on most days he had driven past, Wilkinson had reported them to me in 2 separate satellite comms emails. But Margot's coverage of the situation, including the recorded easement document she had been mailing to neighboring property owners as part of a community PR campaign in summer of 2024, had been thorough enough that Wilkinson had assumed I had granted the easement before deployment, and had simply forgotten to mention it. I did not blame Wilkinson. He had done the job I had asked him to do. The forgery had been competent. The deception had been competent. Margot had spent 18 months planning it before deployment, and 4 months executing it during deployment. The execution had been competent. The recovery, beginning on October 17th of 2024, would be the part of the operation Margot had not planned for. What had happened in those 246 days, by my reconstruction across the next 36 hours after I came home on October 17th, was the following. On May 14th of 2024, 3 months into my deployment, Margot Calloway Shaw walked into the San Diego County Recorder's office in downtown San Diego with a notarized document purporting to be a right-of-way easement agreement executed on May 22, 2023, between Gage Prideaux as grantor and the El Dorado Ridge Community Homeowners Association as grantee, granting the HOA perpetual non-exclusive use of the quarter-mile Prideaux private access road as common area overflow parking for HOA member households and their guests. The document bore my purported signature on page 11. The document had been notarized by a woman whose stamp said, Bridget Baumgartner, Notary Public, Riverside County, Community, XP, December 2024. The document was recorded as document number 2024-0211048 in volume 14,882, page 184 of the San Diego County official records. The document was a forgery. I had not been on U.S. soil on May 22, 2023. I had been on the USS Sterett in a home port rotation availability at Naval Base San Diego on May 22, 2023, a date easily verifiable from the ship's official deck log and from my own personnel records. I had never met any woman named Brigitte Baumgartner. I had never signed any document granting any HOA any access to any portion of my Fallbrook property. On May 28, 2024, Margot Calloway Shaw retained a Vista, California paving contractor named Westvale Asphalt to rehabilitate the El Dorado Ridge common parking area at Gomez Trail Road. Westvale Asphalt arrived on June 4th with a paving crew and a roller. They graded and paved approximately 14,000 square feet of new asphalt across the entire approach area to my home, including the gravel turnaround my grandmother had hand-built in 1971 and the small concrete pad where she had kept her 1969 Ford F-100 pickup truck. The paving cost was approximately $41,000, paid by the El Dorado Ridge HOA Reserve Fund. On June 18, 2024, Margot Calloway Shaw installed 11 cast aluminum HOA member parking signs along the quarter-mile of my private access road. The signs bore the El Dorado Ridge HOA logo and the parking rules text. The signs were bolted to 7 of my grandmother's original wooden orchard fence posts and to 4 of the new posts the HOA had installed without permit on the side of the road. Between June of 2024 and October of 2024, an average of 36 El Dorado Ridge HOA member vehicles per day were parked along the quarter-mile of my private access road. The vehicles included 2 Cadillac Escalades, 6 Mercedes G-Wagons, 11 Tesla Model 3s, 4 Range Rovers, 1 Lamborghini Urus, and approximately 14 other luxury SUVs. The parking rotation log Margot maintained on the El Dorado Ridge community website showed a peak of 51 vehicles during the HOA's August 24th summer sunset block party. None of the HOA residents who parked on my private access road, by the testimony I would later collect from the El Dorado Ridge New Board, had known the easement was forged. They had been told by Margot, with copies of the recorded easement document provided to every member household, that the HOA had obtained perpetual amenity rights to the Prudhoe access road from a Navy commander who was deployed and had granted the easement before deployment as a community goodwill gesture. They had believed her. I learned all of this between 11:14 p.m. on Thursday, October 17th, when I drove up Gomez Trail Road in my truck after picking up Boatson at my cousin's house, and 8:47 a.m. on Friday, October 18th, when I sat at my grandmother's old kitchen table with a fresh pot of coffee and the printed San Diego County Recorder's record of document number 2024-0211048 in front of me. I had not, in the first 10 minutes of pulling up to the bottom of Gomez Trail Road, recognized my own driveway. The gravel turnaround my grandmother had paved by hand in 1971 was no longer gravel. It was fresh, dark asphalt, running approximately 120 feet up to where my grandmother's concrete pickup truck pad had been. The pad was gone. The 11 HOA member parking signs on the fence posts were lit by my headlights as I rolled past them in the truck. The signs had the El Dorado Ridge Community Homeowners Association logo on the top, a small, cast aluminum graphic of 3 palm trees and a sunset that Margot had personally designed in 2022, and a parking rules text panel underneath. I had stopped the truck at the foot of the gravel section that started past the unauthorized pavement, near my grandmother's old orchard fence line gate. Boatson had whined twice in the back seat. He had not, in his 14 years, ever heard that gate creak the way the wind was making it creak that Thursday night. I had pulled the recorder's record on my phone in the truck at 11:31 p.m. Thursday, parked at the bottom of my own paved stolen driveway, looking at the 11 HOA member parking signs and the 23 vehicles still parked along my gravel road at the end of a Thursday evening. I had read the easement document twice. I had recognized the signature as a competent forgery, not a tracing, but a confident hand-drawn imitation. I had confirmed on the U.S. Navy Personnel Command Portal, accessible from my official Navy phone, that I had been logged into Sterrett's Combat Information Center on May 22nd of 2023, from 0700 to 1900 hours, on a documented Naval Surface Force Pacific tactical exercise. I had taken a screenshot of the personnel log. I had then sat in the truck for 41 minutes, looking at the gravel road my grandmother had paved with her 34 years of teaching savings, and thought through, in the careful surface warfare officer command voice I had spent 17 years building, exactly the sequence of operations the next 48 hours were going to require. I drove the rest of the way to the house at 12:14 a.m. I parked under my grandmother's cottonwood. I let Bosun out. I fed him. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table. I made 3 phone calls before sunrise. The first call, at 5:14 a.m., was to Lieutenant Commander Phoebe Reston, the Sterrett's legal officer, who had been with the ship for 2.5 years and who had handled approximately 800 service member legal matters during her tenure. I knew Phoebe's voice. I knew her file work. I knew she answered her phone before 6 a.m. Pacific because she ran a strict 0500 Pacific time routine on the Coronado Bayfront 7 days a week. She answered on the second ring. I said, "Phoebe, it's Gage. I need a Service Members Civil Relief Act briefing on a real property fraud committed against me during deployment, and I need it inside of 2 hours. I have an active forged easement document recorded with the San Diego County Recorder's Office, a paving job done on my private land, 11 HOA signs bolted to my fence posts, and approximately 36 unauthorized vehicles a day on my private access road for the past 4 months. I need to know what tools the SCRA gives me to act today, before I escalate to civil counsel." Phoebe was quiet for 2 seconds. Then she said, "Sir, the SCRA gives you the right to void any contract, easement, or transfer purportedly executed in your name during deployment, with rebuttable presumption of fraud, where the document is signed during a documented period of overseas service. The civilian law overlay in California gives you private property towing under Vehicle Code 22,658 with posted signage and a licensed tow operator. The federal Orlevan overlay gives you mail fraud and wire fraud as predicates if the forgery moved through any interstate channel. I will have a full memo to you in your inbox by 700. I would also like to recommend you retain a San Diego civilian land use attorney today. I have 3 names. I am sending the names with the memo." I said, "Phoebe, I will have a checkbook open." The second call, at 5:48 a.m., was to Coastal Carrier Towing of Oceanside. The owner, a man named Thaddeus Vega, whose father had been my chief petty officer father's gunner's mate aboard the USS Long Beach in 1972, and whom I had known since I was 4 years old, answered his personal cell on the first ring. I said, "Thad, it's Gage Prideaux. I have a vehicle code 22658 situation at my Fallbrook property, and I need 50 trucks tonight." Thad was quiet for 1 second. He said, "Gage, I have 11 trucks of my own. I'll call in mutual aid from 4 other Oceanside operators. We'll have 50 trucks at the bottom of Gomez Trail Road by 2 a.m. Friday morning. Do you have the signage posted?" I said, "I will have it posted by noon today. I'm driving to the Oceanside Sign Center at 900. He said, "Gage, I'll have my dispatcher on site with the master list at 0130. We'll need clear titles on the unauthorized vehicles. The HOA residents will be required to pay reclamation fees plus storage at the impound lot. Standard rates run between $340 and $580 per vehicle. Are you authorizing the standard rates?" I said, "Thad, standard rates, strict by the book under 22,658. No corner cutting. I want every reclamation to be unimpeachable in San Diego County small claims for the next 2 years." He said, "Gage, by the book it is. See you tonight." The third call, at 6:14 a.m., was to my civilian land use attorney, selected from Phoebe's 3-name list, a 61-year-old Carlsbad attorney named Marielle Bridger, who had practiced California real estate fraud litigation for 34 years, and who, when I called her direct cell from Phoebe's memo, picked up on the second ring, even though it was 6:14 in the morning. Marielle said, in the careful Carlsbad attorney's voice she had been using since 1990, "Commander Prideaux, Lieutenant Commander Reston just texted me about you. I cleared my morning. I'll be at your Fallbrook gate at 9 a.m. with a paralegal. I'd like to walk the property, review the easement document, photograph every HOA sign, photograph the paved area, take a perimeter survey, and have a draft civil complaint and emergency injunction ready to file in San Diego Superior Court by Monday morning at 8 a.m. I'd also like to draft a separate SCRA-based federal complaint to be referred to the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of California by Wednesday. The tonight towing operation is your call. I would not advise against it. I would advise extreme procedural compliance. May I bring Phoebe Reston in person to your Fallbrook gate at 9 to coordinate the SCRA and the civil tracks? I said, Marielle, bring Phoebe, bring the paralegal, bring whoever you need. The coffee will be on. I made one additional call at 6:42 a.m. to Ridgeline Community Services, the Vista HOA management company that nominally administered the El Dorado Ridge HOA's operational records. The on-call duty manager, a woman named Saoirse Halloran, who had been the night shift dispatcher since 2019, answered on the first ring. I said, Saoirse, this is Commander Gage Prideaux of the Prideaux property at 14,882 Gomez Trail Road, Fallbrook. I am the adjacent landowner to El Dorado Ridge. I am formally notifying your company that as of this morning, an easement purportedly granted by me to your client HOA, recorded as San Diego County Document 2024-021-1048, has been identified as a forgery executed during my deployed military service. I have engaged civilian counsel to pursue civil and federal remedies. I have engaged a licensed Vehicle Code 22658 tow operator to clear all unauthorized vehicles from my private access road tonight at 2 a.m. I am providing your company with formal notice of these intentions, 20 hours in advance, in order to give your company and your client HOA the opportunity to inform residents and to relocate vehicles before the tow operation begins. The notice is courtesy. The tow is not negotiable. Saoirse Halloran was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Commander, I have been waiting 2.5 years for an adjacent landowner to call our office about Mrs. Calloway Shaw. I will personally notify the El Dorado Ridge Board within the hour. I will personally inform every HOA resident by email within 2 hours. Whatever vehicles are still on your private road at 2 a.m. tonight, those residents will have ignored multiple direct warnings from our company today. We are not going to defend Mrs. Calloway Shaw's conduct. We are going to terminate her management contract by Monday. I said, Saoirse, I appreciate the call. By 7:14 a.m., I had driven to the Fallbrook Sign Center on Main Avenue and woken up the owner, a 66-year-old retired Navy chief named Octavio Castillon, who had been my own commanding officer's chief petty officer aboard the USS Hopper in 2009, and who had recognized my voice in his front door buzzer the moment he had picked it up. Octavio printed 22 California Vehicle Code 22658 compliant warning signs in his shop's high-output thermal printer in 41 minutes. He refused to bill me. He told me, in the careful Navy chief's voice I had remembered since 2009, Commander, you go save your house. The signs are on the house. By 9 a.m., Marielle Bridger and Lieutenant Commander Phoebe Reston were at my gate with a paralegal named Ramona Gable, a tablet loaded with the recorder's record, and a thermos of coffee. By 11 a.m., they had walked the entire perimeter, photographed every HOA sign, taken 31 perimeter survey points with a handheld GPS, and drafted the outline of the Monday morning Superior Court complaint. By noon, I had bolted 22 California Vehicle Code 22658 compliant warning signs to the gate and along the access road, with the precise notice language Marielle had drafted and printed at her office at 7:30 a.m. on cream-colored aluminum stock. By 4 p.m., Saoirse Halloran's office had sent 3 separate email warnings to every El Dorado Ridge HOA member household, informing them that all vehicles parked on the Prideaux private access road must be removed by midnight tonight or will be subject to lawful towing by the property owner at owner's expense. Saoirse had also sent the warnings, by her own initiative, as text messages to the personal cell phone numbers Ridgeline maintained on every household. The same cell phone numbers Margot had told residents at the August Summer Sunset Block Party would Only be used in case of community emergencies. 47 of the 50 households received both the email and the text. The remaining 3 households, including the Callaway Shaw household, the household of Margot's HOA board treasurer Hiram Mendelson, and the household of Margot's HOA board vice president Lavinia Ostrander, received only the email at the addresses Margot had personally entered into the Ridgeline portal in 2022. Margot had, by Saoirse's later report to me, set those 3 accounts' notification preferences to a separate distribution list that Margot herself administered. The 3 households did not see Saoirse's email warning until late Friday morning, after the towing was complete. That distribution list manipulation was, by Marielle Bridger's later motion in the federal sentencing memorandum, a separate predicate act of obstruction. Approximately 14 households moved their vehicles before midnight. 36 households did not. Most of the 36 did not move because they had attended Margot's emergency Friday evening HOA member call at 7 p.m., a call she had organized in response to the Ridgeline warnings, at which she had assured the members, in language she would later be quoted on by sworn deposition from 11 attending members, that the towing threat is bluster from a deployed sailor who has no legal authority over a community common parking amenity. Leave your vehicles where they are. Stand together. She had then asked the members on the call to pledge solidarity by leaving your vehicles on the access road overnight as a show of community unity against an outside agitator. She had been the outside agitator. I had been the deployed sailor. The access road had not been a community common parking amenity since 1971, when my grandmother B. Prideaux had paved it with the savings of her last La Jolla Junior High School paycheck for the express purpose, in her handwritten 1971 journal that I had been keeping in the parlor cabinet since 2018, to ensure that no neighbor, no developer, and no government would ever decide my Fallbrook access was theirs to take. I read B's 1971 journal entry on the porch at 1:14 a.m. Friday morning, by the light of the kitchen lamp, while Thad Vega's first 3 flatbeds were turning onto Gomez Trail Road at the bottom of my access road. The journal entry was on page 81. The handwriting was B's. The ink was the blue Bic fountain pen ink she had used in her teaching grade book for 34 years. The date at the top of the page was October 14th, 1971. The date at the top of the page I read it on was October 18th, 2024, 53 years and 4 days later. The 50 vehicles still parked along my access road at 2 a.m. Friday morning, when Thad Vega and the 50 Coastal Carrier and Mutual Aid tow trucks rolled up, included 6 Mercedes G-Wagons, 4 Tesla Model 3s, 2 Cadillac Escalades, 1 Lamborghini Urus, and 1 white Range Rover with the personalized California license plate Margot 1. Margot Callaway Shaw's white Range Rover was the 11th vehicle Thad's lead crew lifted onto a flatbed at 2:31 a.m. that morning. She did not know her vehicle had been towed until 7:14 a.m. Friday morning, when she walked out her front door in a pink terry bathrobe with a Stanley insulated mug of coffee in her hand, and discovered, as 42 of her El Dorado Ridge neighbors discovered the same morning, that the cars they had been parking on a stranger's private road for 4 to 26 months were no longer there. She called the San Diego County Sheriff's Office at 8:14 a.m. The dispatcher referred her to me. She called my cell phone at 8:21 a.m. By 8 a.m. Friday morning, an additional 21 residents had walked out of their front doors. By 8:14 a.m., 46 of the 50 households knew their cars had been towed. By 8:17 a.m., Margot Callaway Shaw had been at the bottom of her own driveway in her pink terry bathrobe, looking at the empty curb where her white Range Rover with the personalized license plate Margot 1 had been parked for the previous 14 months, holding a Stanley insulated mug of coffee that she was, at the moment she lifted it to her lips, no longer in any condition to drink. She set the Stanley mug down on the El Dorado Ridge community mailbox kiosk. She did not pick it up again. She had walked the length of her own driveway twice in the previous 20 minutes. She had checked the El Dorado Ridge community garage at the bottom of the development. She had walked the perimeter of the community pool parking lot. She had not, until 8:09 a.m. Friday morning, allowed herself to consider that the Stanley insulated mug of coffee she was holding was the last coffee she would drink as a person with the legal right to park a personal vehicle on the Prideaux private access road. She did not introduce herself. She said, in the voice of a woman who had not, in 3 years of HOA presidency, encountered a sentence she could not immediately reverse. Commander Prideaux, there has been a serious misunderstanding. 50 Eldorado Ridge member vehicles have been improperly towed from a community parking area this morning. We need them released immediately. The HOA will cover any tow company fees as a community courtesy. I said, Mrs. Calloway Shaw, the 50 vehicles were towed lawfully from my private access road under California Vehicle Code 22,658 after warning notices that your own HOA management company sent to every member household at my request yesterday afternoon. The reclamation fees are owed by each individual vehicle owner to Coastal Carrier Towing of Oceanside under the standard 22658 schedule. The easement on which your HOA has been parking those vehicles for the past 4 months is a forged document executed in my name during my deployed military service. The forgery is a federal crime under the Service Members Civil Relief Act. My civilian counsel is filing a Superior Court complaint Monday morning. My ship's legal officer is filing a parallel federal complaint Wednesday. I have nothing further to discuss with you. Please direct any subsequent correspondence to Marielle Bridger, Attorney at Law, Carlsbad. Have a pleasant morning. I hung up. Marielle Bridger filed the Superior Court complaint at 8:14 a.m. on Monday, October 21, 2024. Phoebe Reston coordinated the federal SCRA referral with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of California by Wednesday afternoon. The U.S. Attorney's Office had a sealed federal indictment against Margot Calloway Shaw, her husband Trent Calloway Shaw, the Westvale asphalt contractor who had paved over my driveway without confirming the easement, and Brigitte Baumgartner, the forged notary, by the second week of November, on counts including forgery, fraud against the deployed service member under 18, USC Section 1028, mail fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. Sirsha Halloran's Ridgeline Community Services terminated the Eldorado Ridge management contract on Monday, October 21st at 9:14 a.m., 3 hours after Marielle Bridger filed the Superior Court complaint. The Eldorado Ridge HOA board held an emergency meeting that Monday evening at the community clubhouse. The meeting was attended by 47 of 50 member households. The meeting ran for 3 hours and 41 minutes. Margot Calloway Shaw was formally recalled by emergency membership vote at 9:48 p.m. by a vote of 46-1, Margot abstaining. The interim president elected at the same meeting was Captain Lyle Whittemore, the retired Naval Air Station pilot who had walked out of his front door in his bathrobe at 6:47 a.m. on Friday morning to discover his Audi Q5 was no longer in its parking spot, and who had spent the weekend rereading the Eldorado Ridge governing documents and confirming, by his own careful pilot's review, that Margot's 6-year amenity expansion had been fraudulently funded. Lyle Whittemore drove up Gomez Trail Road on Tuesday morning at 9:14 a.m. He walked up my gravel access road past the 11 cast aluminum HOA member parking signs that were still bolted to my fence posts. Marielle had instructed me to leave them in place as physical evidence pending the federal trial. He came up onto my porch. He sat down across the porch table from me. Captain Whittemore brought a small jar of his wife Carmencita's homemade strawberry jam. He set the jar on the porch table between us. He did not open the jar. He did not say anything for a long minute. Captain Whittemore was 68 years old. He had been a P-3 Orion patrol aircraft pilot at NAS Brunswick from 1981 to 1995, and at NAS Whidbey from 1995 to 2009. He had retired as a Navy captain in 2009. He had moved to Eldorado Ridge in 2020. He had known my late father, Halsey Prideaux Jr., in 1991. He had been the duty officer at NAS Brunswick on the night my father, then a 41-year-old Atlantic Fleet anti-submarine warfare officer aboard the USS South Carolina, had brought a P-3 detachment back from a North Atlantic exercise. Lyle said, "Gage, I knew your father. He was a good officer. I am very sorry for what my HOA did to your land during your deployment. I said, Captain, the HOA did not do it. One person did it. The HOA is going to fix it. He said, Commander, I am going to fix it. I have one personal question first. I said, Of course. He said, Your grandmother, B, did she know my mother? I said, Lyle, tell me about your mother. He said, She taught 7th grade English at La Jolla Junior High from 1948 to 1968. Her name was Cordelia Whittemore. I said, Lyle, my grandmother B. Prideaux taught 7th grade English at La Jolla Junior High from 1939 to 1973. They worked together for 20 years. He said, Gage, I think I would like to come back next Sunday with my wife and bring a flat of lamb avocados from the Calavo booth. I said, Captain, bring Bosun a chew toy too. He came back the following Sunday with his wife Carmencita and a flat of lambs and a rubber chew toy shaped like a P3 Orion. Bosun spent the next 4 months chewing on the P3 Orion. The El Dorado Ridge HOA paid Coastal Carrier Towing the full vehicle code 22658 reclamation and storage fees for all 50 towed vehicles on Wednesday, October 23rd from the HOA Reserve Fund, approximately $23,000 total, in lieu of forcing individual residents to absorb the costs. The HOA also paid, by separate Tuesday meeting motion, the full cost of restoring my grandmother's gravel turnaround and concrete pickup truck pad to their pre-2024 condition. The Westvale asphalt removal crew was led by the same foreman who had done the original paving in June, a 36-year-old asphalt journeyman named Quincy Hatfield, who had not, by his own sworn deposition in February of 2025, known the easement was forged when he had done the original work. Quincy had personally apologized to me at the gate on the first morning of the November removal. He had brought his daughter, Lila, age 8, with him to the gate that morning and had asked his daughter to give me a small jar of locally pressed Fallbrook olive oil his wife had bottled that fall. I had accepted the olive oil. I had introduced Lila to Boatson. Lila had named one of the avocado trees in the front orchard after Boatson that morning. The tree was a 32-year-old Haas that my grandmother Bea had planted in 1992. It has been the Boatson tree in the Hatfield family record ever since. Quincy brings Lila back to the property every January with a fresh jar of olive oil to check on the tree. Westvale Asphalt removed the unauthorized pavement across 2 weeks in November under HOA supervision. My grandmother's gravel turnaround was re-graveled with hand-screened decomposed granite by a small Fallbrook landscaping crew Lyle Whittemore hired personally on the Saturday morning before Thanksgiving. The crew finished by sunset. They did not bill the HOA. Lyle paid them himself out of pocket. He told me he would. The federal SCRA case against Margot Calloway Shaw was the first SCRA forgery case filed in the Southern District of California in 7 years. Phoebe Reston attended the federal arraignment in San Diego on November 18th in dress blues as the official Navy representative for the case. Marielle Bridger represented me in the parallel civil action. Lyle Whittemore attended the arraignment in his old Navy captain's dress uniform in the second row of the gallery as a personal show of support that he had not asked me about and that he had told me about only after he had already attended. Margot Calloway Shaw pleaded out in federal court in Federal of 2025 to 4 counts: forgery in furtherance of a fraud against a deployed service member, mail fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. She drew 36 months in federal custody and personal restitution of approximately $148,000 across the HOA reserve damages, the forgery investigation costs, and my legal fees. Her husband Trent pleaded out the same day to 2 counts of wire fraud and 1 of conspiracy. He drew 19 months. Bridget Baumgartner, the forged notary, pleaded out in May to 1 count of forgery and 1 of falsifying a notarial act. She drew 12 months in federal custody and permanent revocation of her notary commission. Westvale Asphalt's owner pleaded out in June to misprision of felony for failing to verify the easement before paving. He drew 11 months and a 6-figure fine. I deployed on my next operational rotation on March 14th of 2025, a 4-month Indo-Pacific patrol on the Sterret. Marlowe and Stark and Kareen came up to Fallbrook to stay at my grandmother's house for 2 weeks of the deployment in July. Lyle Whittemore picked the kids up from Coronado in his Audi Q5 himself on the day they arrived. He brought them a flat of lamb avocados. Marlo practiced her upright bass on the porch every evening. Stark spent 2 weeks in the avocado orchard with Lyle's grandson, Henry. Boatswain slept under the front porch swing the entire time. Corinne had agreed in May of 2025, after a long phone call from Lyle Whittemore's wife, Carmencita, whom she had never met in person, and who had heard from Lyle about the kids' first Fallbrook visit in March, to allow the children to spend 2 weeks with me on the Fallbrook property each summer for the next 3 years, on the standard custody schedule, plus the alternating weekend stateside cycle. The agreement had not been a court order. It had been an email exchange between Corinne and me in May at 9:14 p.m. on a Wednesday. Corinne had written, in 3 short sentences, "Gage, Carmencita Whittemore called me today. She told me about the gravel road. She told me what your grandmother's house looks like now. I would like the children to spend more time there." I had written back, in 2 short sentences, "Corinne, the children are welcome any time. Thank you." My grandmother's 1971 journal has been on the parlor desk at the Fallbrook house since the morning I read it at 1:14 a.m. on October 18, 2024. The journal is in Bee's handwriting. The blue Bic fountain pen she had been writing in it with has been in the same coffee mug on the parlor desk where she had left it on the last day she had used it in May of 2018. The mug has not been moved. I add a fresh cup of coffee to it every Sunday morning and read 1 page of Bee's 1971 journal before I take Boatswain out into the orchard. The journal will take me, at my current Sunday morning pace of 1 page a week, approximately 3 more years to finish. I am not in any hurry. I came home from the second deployment on July 22nd of 2025. The kids and Corinne were on the porch when I drove up Gomez Trail Road. Boatswain was on Marlo's lap. Lyle and Carmencita were on the second porch swing. My grandmother's gravel turnaround was the same gravel turnaround she had hand-built in 1971. The 11 cast aluminum HOA member parking signs had been removed from the fence posts in March, after the federal trial concluded. I sit on the porch of Bea's farmhouse most evenings when I am stateside. Boatswain, 16 years old now, sleeps under the porch swing. The 11 HOA member parking signs that were on the fence posts are gone. The pavement is gone. The 1971 gravel turnaround is back. The hand-screened decomposed granite is the same color it was the year my grandmother laid it. Bea's blue Bic fountain pen is in the coffee mug on the parlor desk. The 1971 journal is open on the desk to page 81. Marlo is 13 now. She has gotten serious about the upright bass. Her middle school orchestra teacher told Corinne in September of 2025 that Marlo has the rare combination of ear and discipline that suggests a real future in classical performance. Marlo practices her upright bass on the porch swing every other Saturday morning. Stark and Henry Whittemore, Lyle's 11-year-old grandson, in for the summer from Bethesda, Maryland, play catch in the orchard most third Sundays. Stark has decided he wants to be a Navy P-3 Orion pilot, like Captain Whittemore. Henry has decided he wants to be a Navy destroyer commanding officer. They have not, as of the last Sunday they played catch in the orchard, settled the question of which path is the harder one. I do not intend to tell them either way. Lyle and Carmencita come over for coffee on Tuesdays. Carmencita brings the same strawberry jam she brought on that first October Tuesday in 2024. She has, by her own count, baked 141 different jars of homemade jam for me across the year since. Lyle has, on the same count, told me 141 different stories about my father and about my grandmother, most of them slightly improved by the third or fourth telling. I have not corrected him. The avocado trees, including the Boatswain tree Lila Hatfield named in 2024, are healthy. The Haas crop in 2025 was the best in 8 years. The picking crew was Quincy Hatfield, his daughter Lila, his wife Renata, and Lyle and Carmencita Whittemore. We picked across 2 Saturday mornings in November. We boxed approximately 1,100 pounds of Haas at standard commercial grade. Calavo growers took the entire crop at fair market wholesale on a Wednesday morning at the Fallbrook receiving station. The check covered Marielle Bridger's full remaining legal fees and a small donation to the Fallbrook Veterans Council's holiday meal program in my grandmother B. Prideaux's name. If you have ever come home from a long deployment to find that an HOA has been quietly taking pieces of your property while you were gone, comment below with your state and what they took. Read every one. Subscribe. Next week, a Florida widower, a 1972 Cadillac, and the HOA president who picked the wrong car. She picked the wrong Cadillac.
What Margaret Calloway Shaw did not understand, and what most petty tyrants never understand, is that the man across the property line was not a Navy commander who was going to be retired from a 9-month deployment to do anything about a first easement. He was a 17-year surface welfare officer who has spent 6 operational deployments learning how to coordinate 50 access operations on a 4-hour planning window. She thought a first document was a strategy. He thought California Vehicle Code 22658 and the Service Member Civil Relief Act were a strategy. The Vehicle Code wins because Vehicle Code 22658 does not get angry and it does not need to lift its voice. If you are an active duty service member and you suspect somebody has been doing something to your real property during your deployment, the first thing you should do tonight is contact your ship's or unit's legal officer. The SCRA gives you remedies surveillance law does not. The first phone call is free. If this story hit home, drop your own HOA nightmare in the comments, your state, and what they took. Subscribe. Next week, a Florida widower, a 1972 Cadillac, and the HOA president who picked the wrong car. See you on the next one.